I think we shall kick off. So good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar, which is all about how we make employee surveys count. I am Tom Debenham. I'm the founder of People Insight, and I'm joined today by my two colleagues, Anya, who's a senior program manager at People Insight, and Kate, who's our head of consultancy. Before we kick off and get into the content, just some housekeeping. First of all, you don't have to take copious notes if you don't want to. At the end of the webinar, we will be releasing a recording of the session. Please, I know it's a webinar, so we'd love really to be in the same room as you, but webinars make sense from a time point of view, but we're going to try and keep it interactive if we can. So please do, as we go through the session, use the comments feature in Teams to ask questions. We will be keeping our eye out on the chat function. Use the reaction function also if there's anything that we say that really exactly like that. If there's anything that we say that gels with you or that you want to ask a question about, use the reaction, keep the comments coming. We'll try and keep it interactive. I appreciate the nature of a webinar. They can be a little bit one way, but we're going to keep time at the end for Q&A as well. So, but please do use the chat function if you have any questions that crop up as we go through the session. Finally, we're here to help. So along with the webinar, if there's anything that we cover today that is of particular interest, so for example, if you'd like a deeper dive into the platform, or if you're an existing client and you'd like to have a refresher conversation with us about your post-survey action approach, we're here to help. We're going to give you an opportunity at the end of the session to book a one-to-one follow-up with us on any of the topics that we cover today. So a little bit of housekeeping there. We are delighted to be joined today by a combination of clients and non-clients. We've had over 150 people signing up for the webinar and sending us some really great information in terms of the challenges that they're facing in making surveys actionable. But for those of you that don't really know us that well, a brief intro. So People Insight, our mission is to provide our clients with the most actionable employee experience platform, but one that's powered by people. So there are two components to what we offer. There's our platform, which has been designed essentially from the ground up to enable agile listening and, more importantly, action at scale. And this webinar is all about action at scale and in a governed way. So there's the platform. That's a core part of our offer. But also, we know that no matter how good your platforms don't change culture, people do. You do, your leaders do, your managers do. And so we provide a range of expert services to support you and your leaders and managers to make the right changes happen that drive your culture in the direction that you need it to go. So that's what we mean by actionable platform powered by people. And obviously on this webinar today, we're going to delve into both of those areas in some detail. So that's our mission. In terms of who we work with, we are privileged to be trusted by hundreds of organisations across pretty much every sector of the economy in the UK and globally. If I was asked to summarise what are the similarities across our clients, I'd say I guess there are two similarities. The first is most of our clients are operating at scale. So our average client employs about 1,000 people, and that goes up to over 100,000 in some cases. So whilst it might be really easy to survey thousands of people, acting in a meaningful way at the top level, at the department level, and at the functional level, that gets tricky, when you're operating at scale. And so that's one of the commonalities amongst our clients, and that's one of the things that this webinar we're going to tap into, how you can solve some of those challenges at those multiple levels when you are operating at scale. So scale is something that our clients share. And I guess the other thing that all of our clients share is they recognize that culture drives organization results. So they're measuring employee experience and employee opinion, not because it's a nice thing to do, though I guess to a certain extent it is a nice thing to do. They're measuring it because they know that if they get it right, if they get the right culture, they will deliver their strategy. So our clients are in the business of creating high engagement, high performance cultures. And therefore, again, surveying has to lead to action. Otherwise, it's not going to make a difference in achieving that outcome. So that's a little bit about People Insights and who we work with. Now, we've been doing this for, well, I'm going to say over 15 years. It's a few years longer than that, but I don't want to sound too old. So we've been working in this space for many, many years. And I know from the webinar signups and the challenges that you're sharing with us that we've got quite an experienced audience here. So we know you've got quite a lot of experience as well. But in our experience over that period of time, there are three things at least that support making surveys actionable and ensuring that they deliver the strategic results that you're looking for. And the three pillars that we're going to talk about today are, first of all, you need a great platform, and we need to move beyond survey platforms into action platforms. I guess it's probably worth saying one of the things that we have noticed over the last 10 to 15 years is, to a certain extent, there have been too many surveys going on. Technology has made it very easy to survey people on a monthly, weekly, daily, continuous basis. And actually, one of the myths that's been peddled, I guess, by a number of survey vendors over that period of time is that more surveys is better, and that organizations need to move away from annual, 6 monthly, quarterly, etc. surveys to continuous surveying. You're doing that with your customers, you should do that with your employees, you should survey them all the time. Well, yes, survey technology has made it easy to do that, but if you continuously survey without getting the action cadence right, then the survey to action ratio goes out of sync and you end up destroying the thing that you're trying to drive, which is a strong sense of employee voice and a strong sense of employee engagement. So we need to move away from thinking about survey platforms and we need to start thinking about action platforms. And that's what we're going to be doing today, looking at the ways in which certainly our platform supports action. And survey cadence is clearly important within that mix. So the platform is one area that we'll be looking at today. I'll take you through some of the features of our platform. I am aware this might feel a little bit like a sales pitch. I'm going to try my best to not put this out there as a sales pitch for our platform. There are other platforms that drive action and connect action directly to survey results. We're not the only one, but I want to show you some of the features of ours because it's just indicative of what can be done, I think. So the platform is one area. I mentioned that platforms don't create change, your people do. And so Kate will be taking you through how we can support your people and bring some expertise to bear to ensure leaders and managers are taking the right kind of actions. And Anya will talk about the communication overlay that is so important to employee buy-in on a continuous basis. And it's so important that your employees don't just give their feedback, but see that action is taking place as a result of it. And that's where communication plays a super key role. So those are some of the things that we're going to be covering in the webinar today. We ask you as part of sign up to share with us some of the challenges that you have making surveys actionable. And before I get into the section looking at what our platform does, I just want to reflect on some of the challenges that you've reflected to us. And these aren't all of them. These are just a selection of the challenges that I think our platform or a good action platform ought to help you solve. So some of the challenges in making surveys lead to real change include, well, yeah, this is a really basic one, but it's true. We need to make sure that survey questions are focused. We need to know how to move from gazing at survey results to generating post-survey action plans. We need to figure out what level to focus on. Do we focus on corporate level actions or do we focus on local actions? I guess we would say you need to focus on both and the layers in between as well. if you're a very large organization. But then if we're a very large organization with, say, 10,000 people, how do we put governance around action planning right down to that site level? Which is one of the questions that have been raised in the pre-webinar signups. How do we turn verbatim comments into actions? How do we identify, what to do when we've got hundreds or thousands of people commenting? How do we support managers by invoking and giving them ideas on what the most appropriate course of action are? How do we have oversight of progress? Again, most of our clients are operating at scale. So if you've delegated action planning down to your line managers in the HR function, you need some visibility of that. You need some governance of that. You need to know how things are progressing and which actions are making a difference. And of course, another fundamental in the very busy world in which we live, how do we keep it on the agenda? How do we ensure people stick to their actions? So these are some of the challenges that you, as experienced survey owners, employee engagement managers, there's a range of job titles, in our audience today. But these are some of the challenges that you're telling us you're facing, which are no surprise to us, I have to say. These are the things that we work on, on a daily basis with our clients. So from a platform point of view, as I say, I won't run a platform demo. In actual fact, if you'd like a platform demo, we'd love you to sign up for one after this webinar, but I will give you some snippets of what our platform does. And the first thing I would say is our platform directly connects employee survey results to an action planning methodology, so that once you've decided which levels within your organization you think need to be accountable for action planning, we can provide those leaders at those levels with access to their survey results and an action planning methodology within which there's lots of support and governance, so that your leaders are reviewing the survey results and taking action in the same place in a governed way. And I'll talk about governance, because there's two different dimensions to governance as I go through this. So yeah, it's not good enough, as you all know, for leaders to just be gazing at survey results. They do need to have a methodology for taking action, and ideally that should happen in the same place, in our opinion. But to the first challenge that one of you raised, we do need to make sure questions are focused. So all of making surveys actionable begins with the survey questions themselves. And I appreciate for many of you this is a really basic point, but just because it's a basic point, it's still worth confirming that you have to start with a strong set of questions that measure the thing that you're trying to drive, whether that be engagement or inclusion or well-being, that evidentially measure those things in a scientifically proven way and that are actionable. So an example of a bad question might be, put this out to your team. An example of a bad question might be, if you're interested in management effectiveness, I like my manager. Okay, that's a bad question, because if I'm a line manager looking at, the scores that I might get for that, 40% of my team like me. Okay, what am I supposed to do with that? That's not particularly actionable, and I'm not even sure it's necessarily that important. It's not something that's been proven to drive engagement or disengagement one way or the other, but it's certainly not actionable. It's too vague and unhelpful. So if we're interested in management effectiveness, which we are, if we're looking to drive engagement, then much better questions would be questions like this. My manager takes time to coach me and to develop my skills, or my manager gives me regular feedback on how I'm doing. So the difference with those questions is, first of all, respondents are going to be really clear on what the question is asking. And secondly, managers, when reviewing their data, are going to have a really good idea of the kind of things they might need to do to respond to results if they're, less positive than they would like to, those results to be. So let's start at the beginning. We have to start with robust models that ask actionable questions. And how is this linking to our platform? Those of you that are using our platform to drive surveys yourselves will know that there's a range of models baked into the platform that contain the right questions to measure the things that are important and in an actionable way. So it does start with the survey models. But we need to go further than that. So I talked about one of the things our clients want is they want a governed approach to action planning. So whilst questions can be written to be actionable, there are still very different ways that you might want your managers to respond to a given question. And the ways that you might want a manager to respond to a question will vary depending upon your industry, your sector, your culture, etc. So one of the things that we place into our platform are what we call action inspirations. And these link to those actionable survey questions. And these, whilst we do have templated off-the-shelf examples of action inspirations, we can customize these for your organization. So as to ensure that you're giving suggestions to leaders and managers in terms of things they might do that reflect your work environment and ways of working. So if we look at this question, there's a set of action inspirations for this question, and I'm guessing that these were written for a software development environment. It's talking about lightning innovation sessions, sprint retrospectives, and so on. So one of the things that we can do within our platform is guide your managers to the types of actions that they might take that suit your culture and ways of working. Now, I'm not suggesting that managers sit in a dark room and do action planning on their own, just them in conversation with the platform. Kate's going to talk about how we do need to bring the team view in, and we do need to have a conversational approach to action planning, but the system will create suggestions where you can govern the types of suggestions that it's creating. One of the challenges that another of you identified was how do we create tangible actions from verbatim comments? And there are a couple of ways that we can do this. So the first is using open text questions to ask people for ideas. So one of our favorite questions, which is asked in pretty much every survey that we issue, is, well, what one thing would you change about working here? And we get lots of great ideas back from employees to that question. And again, if you think about your leaders at different levels, some of them might have, quite a small team where they can look at those comments and see a very specific suggestion that they think, yeah, that's a great idea, I'm going to work on that. And what our system enables is the leader to take an individual comment, click on, connect to action plan, and take that idea directly into their action plan. So there's two ways that people can support, can generate action plans. One is from the action inspirations linked to questions. Another is linked to individual comments. So this is a really good example of people being heard. Someone's made a suggestion and their manager's actually added that suggestion directly to their action plan. I guess you might think that's clear, that's simple and easy, but is it a little simplistic? And I think at one level it is simplistic, because the challenge for leaders at higher levels is they might have hundreds of comments to interpret and make sense of. So how do you work with hundreds of comments or thousands of comments and make sense of those in order to generate sensible action plans? And this is where Prism, which is our generative AI, comes in. So Prism, which is essentially based on the same technology as ChatGPT, it's phenomenal. It's like black magic. It's phenomenal at reading comments, categorizing those comments, understanding those comments, and then enabling you as a leader to interact with it, to really explore, okay, well, what are people saying, for example, about teamwork? Why are they saying the things that they are about teamwork? Prism will say, do you want to know more? For example, do you want to know which teams are saying this, or which length of service group, or which role or function group? So Prism enables you to not just understand the themes at a high level and the categories, but also to drill in to see which groups are saying the things that are being said. And then it will offer for you actions based on this collated data. So a third way in which the platform supports you with action planning is taking those comments from groups. So this isn't individual comments, but taking comments from groups of people, summarizing them into categories, and then saying, based on what people are saying, I suggest you think about this action. So Prism will generate action inspirations, and these are derived specifically from the things people are saying. So in the earlier example where I was talking about action inspirations linked to questions, Those are soft coded. We've written those in discussion with our clients to reflect what we think we might want to see managers doing. But what Prism is doing is it's got a very open mind, and it's reading what people are saying and saying, based on what your people are saying, I suggest you think about this. Just inspirations. It's not prescriptive, but that's what the Gen AI does. So we love it. It's a real shortcut to action planning, particularly when you've got those large groups of people commenting. So moving on somewhat from that, and if we have in our mind an organization with, say, 1,000 people, perhaps 50 to 100 managers in that organization generating action plans within the platform, the second part of governance is, and this is one of the challenges that I mentioned earlier that one of you submitted to us. There's a challenge here, which is we want local ownership of actions, but HR needs oversight of progress. So if we think about those 50 to 100 managers compiling their action plans, our platform will enable you to take a bird's eye view of those action plans and of the progress that's being made against those action plans. So, for example, you can dip in as a super user, and most of you, I think, on this webinar would likely be super users, and you can see what's the participation rate. Are my managers engaging with the system? Are they engaging with the action planning process? And those that are, how are they progressing their actions? To what extent are their actions in progress, not started or complete? So that's a very simple overview for you in HR of what's happening from an action planning point of view. You're going to want to delve in, though. You're going to want to know, for example, which questions are people actioning? Are they actioning the right questions? So here's an example of a report for you as super users that shows you, in this case, the most actioned question is the question, I feel valued and recognized for the work that I do. And it's great to see that one's being actioned because it's high impact. It's a key driver in this organization. I can see there are 37 actions against this. So you can see, so long as your managers are using the action planning functionality, you can see what actions are being taken against which parts of the survey, and is it the right parts of the survey. So and the key driver analysis, obviously, that is there to guide managers towards those questions, and it's working in this case. But another thing you're going to want to know is, okay, so that's the most actioned question. What actions are people taking against that question? So you can then delve in and you can see for each individual question the specifics of the manager action plans. This is just a summary view, but you can see those little ellipsis buttons. If you want to know who has an action called encourage use of peer recognition, you can click there and see this is Tom's action, this is the detail of the action, this is when it's going to be complete, and so on. So you've got governance in two ways within the platform. The first way is governing the kind of suggestions that are given to managers in terms of actions, and the second governance feature is this bird's eye visibility of actions and progress. Another challenge that you raised was, how do we keep action planning on the agenda? How do we stick to action plans? And classically, HR has a job on their hands post survey in driving action planning. Well, I'm not saying HR doesn't have a role in terms of facilitating action planning, but the platform is going to take some of the heavy lifting away from you. So built into our platform, if your managers are using the action planning functionality and setting dates for actions, our platform will nudge managers in a gentle way to say, you said you were going to do X by Y day. Here's a reminder. Please pop in and just update your action plan so that the tool will do some of the nudging so that you don't have to. So those are just a selection of features within the platform. And like I say, I'm hesitant. I don't want this to feel like a sales pitch. It's not. I'm just saying, whatever platform you use, these are some of the things that ought to be available to you. But no matter how good your platform is, and our platform, obviously, we would say this, we think is excellent. Platforms don't create change, people do. So what I would like to do is hand over to Kate, who will take you through some of the ways in which we can help your people, your leaders and managers, to make the right changes happen. Thank you.
Super, thank you, Tom. And there are some questions coming through. Please do keep them coming as we chat, and we'll make sure that there is time to respond to those at the end of the session. But yes, I'll carry on with the next session for now. This is a short session where I really want to focus on the value of support from experts as well as brilliant tech. So, Tom has shown you a little bit about our platform, and it is an amazing resource. It really does contain a huge amount of information to support clients on their survey journey. But in our experience, the most effective transformation does come from that combination of powerful analytics and expert human guidance. So that's really what I want to focus on in this session. And thanks again for submitting challenges in advance. That was super helpful in terms of us putting together our sessions. I think I'll be addressing quite a lot of the challenges that were raised through this session. I've put some of them here on the screen, but these were fairly typical of the themes that came through. So typical challenges were around getting commitment from the top, having accountability. So I'll chat about that in a moment, alongside choosing the right actions. So making sure that we're choosing actions that really do stick, and really helping managers to understand the important role that they play in the process. So making sure that they do feel empowered, that they are aware of the responsibilities of them, and that they feel able to drive action without being helicoptered, which is a very nice phrase. So I'll try and cover these points as I talk through. And let's talk firstly about commitment. So at People Insight, we believe that impactful change does require quite a structured approach. And I talk a lot about these four fundamentals for effective action. So the 4 C's of commitment, clarity, collaboration, and communication. And the first of these is commitment from leaders. I feel strongly, and I'm sure you'll all agree, that engagement does need to be championed from the top. Leaders really do need to demonstrate their commitment to listening to feedback and to taking action aligned with strategic priorities. And without this commitment, it can be really difficult to really move forward after a survey. And I think there is a risk that engagement activity can become superficial. So let's just hope that that commitment is there and make sure that it is there before we go any further. But below that, I think you need even more clarity. So when we run surveys, we're often providing data down to individual managers. And we need to be clear before the survey results are released what expectations are. So if all managers are getting data from their teams, do we expect all managers to take local action? So let's be clear about that up front. If they are expected to take action, what's the process for that? How many actions should they be taking? When should they be doing it, etc. So just being really clear about the process that you wish to follow. And it does vary a little bit between organisations. This helps to really ensure consistency and accountability. And then collaboration. So, Tom's really demonstrated how amazing AI is at generating ideas. It's a fantastic starting point, but the most effective solutions do come from engaging with employees directly. It's really important that they are part of the conversation. Again, the survey provides so much information, but not necessarily the why. So having conversations post-survey helps to ensure that actions put in place genuinely do improve the employee experience. And then finally, communication. It's so important that communication is prevalent throughout. One of the big statistics that we look out for very quickly after a survey closes is whether or not staff believe action will happen as a result of the survey. That's asked through many of our surveys, and the results can vary enormously. Sometimes it's lower than organisations would expect to see, which is always disappointing. And I think a lot of that does talk to communication. This visibility of the survey results and of actions that follow the survey is so important. Employees do really need to see the connection between the feedback that they give and real change. So having those actions communicated and then regular updates on the progress of actions is so important. And it helps to reinforce trust in the process and encourage continued engagement. So before embarking on action planning activity, do consider whether or not these 4 C's are planned for. Okay, so just to extend this guidance and thinking particularly now about line managers, we talk a lot about our 6 steps to success, and this can ensure that managers feel really confident about expectations and that they're able to take action in a timely but considered way. So obviously before getting to action, there is a need to truly understand the survey results. So managers do need to have the time to thoroughly explore their data and get a clear understanding of it. And then it's important to share the key messages with staff. Of course, employees want to hear the results of the survey, not just at an overall level, but for their individual team as well. So that's a given, but actually turning that into a discussion is so powerful, because it's only then that managers can really understand the underlying reason behind the results. So we strongly encourage managers to discuss survey results, to foster an open conversation that really helps them to uncover the why behind the survey data. Now, it may be that these conversations really uncover lots of different topics and possibly potential actions in many different areas. So the next stage is that prioritization, because while it could be possible to take action in lots of different areas, we need to be realistic about what is possible and what is going to have the biggest impact. So prioritization is super important, and our general advice is that managers shouldn't be focusing on more than 3 areas, really just to make sure that we're taking a manageable approach to improvement. So then once these action areas have been agreed, it's about really providing a very clear plan of what we're going to do, just to articulate clearly to staff what expectations are, who's leading, by when, etc. So it's all clearly documented. And as we'll talk again about a little bit more later, it can be really helpful to put those plans on the dashboard to show accountability, but also to enable you to measure progress later. So it can be really helpful to map out these key stages, and actually it can support where you have timescales associated with the different phases as well, so that there is real clarity of expectations that all staff should hear the local results in the next few weeks, and then a few weeks after that there is an expectation that plans will be developed, just to keep all managers working consistently and to ensure that work progresses at pace. Okay, so once this framework for action's been established, it's really about providing the right support to drive change. So at People Insight, our goal is to really help organisations to turn their rich survey data into meaningful action. And we typically do this through presentations, through workshops, and through focus groups. So in terms of presentations, we're really keen to translate the data into actionable insights. So we're going beyond analysing the data to really highlight the key insights, to identify priority areas, and to provide recommendations. And we can draw on real life examples of great practice. We can offer practical and achievable solutions that we know will make a difference. So that's really powerful and really important. And these often lead to then facilitated workshop with senior teams, which again are so important in terms of providing a space for critical discussions that drive change. This can help leaders to really explore different perspectives, to align actions with strategic priorities, and to build shared accountability for actions. So here we're going beyond really supporting an understanding of the insights, but really using these insights to drive meaningful and lasting improvements. And then focus groups. I've already mentioned the importance of really getting the voice from employees post-survey to dig deeper. And focus groups can provide a forum for staff to share their experiences, to really clarify the why, the key issues from the survey, and to validate areas for improvement. If we've got focus groups in the mix, this ensures that actions are shaped by the real voices of employees and leads to solutions that are impactful and really relevant. So together, these interventions can ensure that leaders are informed, they're engaged, and they're equipped to deliver meaningful actions following their survey. And we have done exactly this for many of our clients. One example is a recent university client where we did each of these activities, and that helped them to agree clear actions at the university level. And their next survey showed big improvements in their main action area, which was really fantastic to see. And at a more local level, we support managers in building the skills and confidence that they need to foster a culture of engagement and to drive meaningful action. So we provide training, again, workshops, as well as coaching. So with the training, we're really helping managers to understand their key role in driving engagement, understanding what engagement's all about and how their behaviours make a big difference. We help them to move beyond the numbers, to understand the why behind engagement, and really guide them to translate survey findings into tangible improvements. And part of that is having the confidence to have a really useful discussion with your team and to ensure that you're able to sort of facilitate a brainstorming session, for example. But employee engagement is most impactful when teams are involved. So having these facilitated sessions can be super helpful in terms of making sure that managers and employees are working together to co-create, collaborating to come up with the best actions. So this is really helpful in terms of making sure that everybody's aligned, that this is a team action plan rather than just something that the manager has come up with in isolation. Making it a team effort is super helpful. And finally, through one-to-one and group coaching, we can help managers to really analyse their survey results in a safe space, to uncover underlying challenges and identify where maybe behavioural change is required. So this sort of safe space gives them an opportunity to reflect, to share concerns, and to develop the skills that they need to inspire and engage their teams. And this additional support that we offer to managers really does enable them to lead actions with clarity and with confidence. And again, I'm delighted to report that this approach does work. Just one example here is from our client PPHE Hotel Group, who operate Park Plaza hotels. We've worked with them on their employee engagement programme for several years, and in late 2022, they asked for our support really to ensure that leaders of individual hotels were using their results strategically and really leading engagement within their hotels. So we worked with PPHE to design a training course to support their general managers and HRBPs to embed engagement within individual hotels. We followed this up with one-to-one coaching after their next survey to really help them explore the survey results in detail and to identify potential priority areas to discuss with their teams. And this work contributed to strong improvements in their next survey results. So really powerful improvements in terms of engagement and particularly in intention to stay, which is a very important metric, particularly for this sector. And we're delighted that this work has contributed to PPHE now being shortlisted for the Springboard Employee Engagement Award. The winner's due to be announced next week, so we're keeping everything crossed for them. So that's just one example, but there are numerous of examples, where we've worked with clients, they've then done a follow-up pulse survey, and what we want to see is these important metrics improving over time. So I'm now going to hand over to Anya, who's going to talk about the role of communications.
Thank you, Kate. Just move on to the next slide. Thank you. So I'm going to just take a few minutes to talk about the bit that really excites me in my job, working on many surveys with some of you probably listening in today. You know that this is really important to me. I'm really passionate about the communications that runs through all the programs. I think in my experience, what I have noticed is that so much work does go into action planning and all work surrounding the survey, but people don't know about it. So the success of your program, I feel, will really come down to communicating out to the organisation all that hard work that we've been talking about, all the actions that are going into the platform, the work that's going on in focus groups and presentations. People need to know throughout the organisation about what's going on. So that's what I'll be covering a little bit over the next couple of slides. Thank you so much for the comments that you've put in as well. Really relevant to the work that I'm doing, definitely on a day-to-day basis at the moment, thinking about how we're going to empower managers to listen and to drive change, how we're going to keep plans alive and on the agenda. So hopefully I'll cover some of this now to help. So I'm sure you'll all be familiar with the various phases of planning out a survey and communicating about a survey as well. You've got your pre-survey, your live and your post-survey sections. I really like to split that post-survey section into two parts. I think this really works. So that's one of my tips. Split into that first top level strategic post-survey comms and then move on to the local area planning of post-survey comms as well. And what I've noticed as well is that there's so much joy and enthusiasm in those pre-survey comms phases. Everybody's really excited about creating inspirational strap lines, beautiful visuals to put everywhere, and all this energy that goes into driving a strong response rate. And absolutely, that's so important. There's no doubt that that work pays off. However, we need that same kind of energy post-survey as well. And that's not easy. I know that's not easy at all. And it can be quite challenging. It can be quite uncomfortable depending on the results that come out as well, and the actions that need to come out following the survey. But it's important that we keep this energy up post-survey, because otherwise that's where that momentum can drop off, and the energy goes off a bit. So you don't need me to tell you, we've been saying it throughout as well, that strong post-survey communication phase is essential for building trust in the whole feedback process, and really building up that belief in action score, because if people know that work's going on, they will continue to give you feedback and be happy to help and support you. So my first top tip is to really plan out a comms plan in detail and in well advance, I'd say, as well. So having pre-agreed dates for when you're going to be putting out those messages will help you as a team to plan this together, but it's also going to ensure that others are really committed to putting these messages out. And I know that's hard, because I know it's hard to get senior leaders sometimes to agree to this, but if we can get their commitment right from the beginning, and hopefully that's already started from the pre-survey stage, you can get them committed to post-survey as well, to putting out those messages. So a plan for comms, those of you that have worked on communication plans, I'm sure are aware, works on various levels. So we'll need to think about those top level senior leader messaging that goes out, and then the manager level as well. What do they need? What can we give the managers? What do we need to communicate out to them about the next steps? And at the same time, we want to allow this two-way communication to ensure that we're keeping agile and that we're all listening to each other as well. So let's have a look first at senior leader messaging. Well, as I said, it's essential that you get those senior leaders to commit to putting out a message straight away once they've had that time to look at the feedback results, and think about the focus areas that they're going to be working on. So I know this is challenging, but it's absolutely crucial and pivotal, I'll say, to the rest of the program as well, that we can get senior leaders really demonstrating that they're actively listening and that they're committed, and that they're accountable for what's happening next. So if we can get those dates in well in advance, that will allow for the time to plan in these beautiful videos, because they don't just happen with a magic fairy. You do have to plan in all that work. So, making sure you've got time for that is important. So not everyone's going to be able to have a nice video in person, but perhaps an animated video, they're quite easy to put together as well, or an infographic like the example here, to really brilliant for just giving everybody some data and some areas that have come out, themes that have come out from the survey. So this is really important. Another thing that I've noticed that works really well is having a web page available within the organisation. This should be set up actually from pre-survey phases of work, so talking about the survey, when it's coming, FAQs on there, and then that continues post-survey as well, where you can have links and information about themes that have come out from the survey, and links to videos and infographics like this would work really well. And at a very minimum, you need to have a thank you message coming out straight after the survey with those milestones. So that plan, again, I'll keep coming back to that plan, that timeline. People need to know when they're going to hear results for their areas and what's happening next. That's really important. But of course, that senior leader messaging doesn't stop just there, that initial message. I think the important thing to remember is to commit to further updates. So in that plan, commitment to dates for we're going to be measuring actually the impact of the work that's going on. We're going to keep this on the agenda. We're going to keep messaging from the top about what's going on, and nice, clear, honest messaging as well. There might be difficult messages that are coming through. There might be difficult things that are happening, but just making sure that something comes out. No communication at all would be absolutely awful after all that work that's gone into the survey and action planning. So that's the senior leader one, which I think is quite a strategic piece. The other bit that's super important is that local post-survey communication. So this is far more practical, thinking about local area leaders or managers. They're going to have questions. What's expected of me? When am I going to see my results? How do I share these out with my teams? Where do I go for help? Who can support me? All these questions need to be answered. And again, by having dates far in advance planned in, you can prepare for getting all these resources together. What we found actually that works really well is having a page on your dashboard which is dedicated to putting together all these resources, tips, links to internal resources that you might have already. You might have very specific steps that you want leaders to take after they've received their dashboard logins, they've looked through their results, and then what happens next? They need this guidance, and we can help you, by the way, to put this on the dashboard. We're finding that this really helps managers, but not just on the dashboard, separately as well. You can have user guides. Some managers are more skilled than others in understanding data and navigating a dashboard, action planning as well. That can be quite daunting bit of work, and for busy managers who already have quite high workload, anything that we can do to support them is going to be welcome, I'm sure. So lots of practical bits of communication that we need to think about, but also from a very strategic point of view, we need to make sure that managers do feel inspired about the role that they have, that they're excited to be driving employee engagement, that they're excited to share these results with their teams and to create these action plans together on the dashboard. We see sometimes managers, sharing the dashboard together with their teams and working on those action plans, as Tom showed us earlier on as well, and those really important get-togethers in person that Kate mentioned as well. So we do lots of face-to-face talking, and those need to be booked into your communication plan as well, I believe. What people need to know is what is available, and that's where the communication plan then starts to become more fluid for two-way communication. So creating these opportunities for more informal get-togethers, face-to-face gathering, perhaps, hopefully, if that's possible, not just with peers, but with senior leaders as well, so that you can really talk about what's going on, share stories, explore ideas, talk about what is working really well, what's not working well, feed up what people are saying on the ground to senior leaders, and what can we keep working on here as well. So I've got a lovely case study here as well. I think what this case study shows is that by that bit of informal communication as well as sharing, you can start to build out stories and case studies. And everybody knows about the you said we did type of stories that we're trying to get together, and that's where they come together. And this example here is lovely. So client of ours, Imperial, created this beautiful brand for their survey. They put this across everything that they did, and also linked to data from their past survey too that we had run for them. And we came and they put together actually these lovely stories on one on their SharePoint actually. So the web page that I mentioned earlier. Then they started to build in case studies here, with some with videos, some with pictures. But what's really lovely is that the stories were shared. So that's really inspirational, and this was backed up by very practical guidance as well. So dashboard user guide showing the next steps, the dates, the tips on how to talk to teams, on how to do action planning as well. So that all comes together to create a really beautiful comms campaign that runs from one survey to the other actually. So we know how important it is for ongoing communication about actions and the reasons why these actions are happening, and how crucial it is for leaders to be sharing this as well. So at People Insight, we have the privilege of working really closely with lots of clients on this. And what's really lovely to see is that the data does show that where there is high belief in action scores, this will correlate with engagement scores as well. So we're really starting to see the impact of all that work going in to show the increases in our data. So that impact is important. I'm going to hand back over to Tom now that has more about the impact.
Thank you so much, Anya and Kate. That chart says it all. When you deploy an effective employee survey program that results in action that's communicated back to your people in a meaningful way, engagement goes up. It's so, in many ways this is so simple. And there's there are challenges in making that happen, we know, but that is the basic essence of this. Take meaningful action, communicate those actions, you will drive the thing that you're looking to drive. Very briefly, I'm aware of time, I just wanted to very quickly touch on, again, I mentioned Prism AI earlier. We know that effective actions create change, but Prism can support us here in showing exactly which actions are making the biggest difference. So this, even for our existing clients, this is a new innovation. You won't have seen this yet, most of you. But where we have clients that are using the action planning functionality in the system, that are running a survey, generating actions, then running a pulse or running a follow-up survey, this is really exciting. What Prism is able to do is analyze the actions that are working and also tell us why they're working, and analyze the actions that are not so effective and tell us why they're not so effective. And yes, I mean, a human being could do the same thing, but it would take quite a long time and potentially be quite expensive if it was a third party doing it. But what Prism will do is call out, and it's in some ways this is a blinding flash of the obvious. When we've run this across real client data sets, you look at what Prism is telling you, you go, oh wow, that is so true. So it's, for example, saying effective actions, and these are based on real client examples. Effective actions are the ones that provide real tangible benefits, that were engaging, weren't one-way conversations, included follow-up mechanisms to track actions and maintain initiative and maintain engagement and progress. Low impact actions, and we love this. It calls a spade, Prism. It doesn't spare any blushes. Low impact actions are those that are just one way, so sharing emails or policy documents. Low impact actions are those that don't have clear execution plans or ongoing monitoring. And this final one, I really like. Low impact actions are the ones that just operate at the level of symptoms and don't tackle root causes. So, we had a client that was doing quite a lot of wellness workshops, but they hadn't actually done anything about the underlying problems associated with resourcing. And Prism was able to identify, yeah, you might be running lots of wellness workshops, but people are still overloaded. So, so just a teaser there of the kind of ways in which Prism can support the analysis of the actions that are working and not working. Anya showed that great example from Imperial of different areas of Imperial sharing their case studies and their success stories. Prism is going to help identify for you the success stories internally that you can then share. So that's probably enough on Prism for now. So in summary, we have talked about 3 key areas that drive effective, actionable surveys. You need an action platform, not a survey platform. Your people create the change, and in many cases do need to be supported, and there's an expertise layer that can be brought to bear there. And communicate. You can't overdo it with communication on an exercise like this. In the 6 minutes that we have left, there were a couple of questions or challenges rather, that you shared with us before the event that we haven't yet covered. One of them, it's a great one, and I'm not going to mention the name of the organization, but it's a very large multi-site hospitality retailer. And their challenge is, how do we maintain commitment to action planning throughout the year from operational sites? And how do we prevent the action plan from becoming wallpaper on a notice board? So, Kate, I'll ask you first of all, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, wallpaper. We don't want that.
No.
So yeah, I think that talks to something that we do often see, actually, that following a survey, there is a lot of energy around coming up with actions, and even organisations do a good job of communicating those actions, putting them on notice boards. But then, real work gets in the way. People get back to stuff that they were doing previously, and it kind of falls off the to-do list. And I think that is a danger that many of you will kind of be aware of. So it is so important to, as Anya said, sort of timetable updates and make sure that it's on the agenda of team meetings, that we're regularly updating what we're doing, and not just having posters that say these are the actions, but what people want to know is, okay, so how's it going? What have we achieved? And just to feel that they are kept up to date, but also have the opportunity to support and to influence and to, everyone wants this to be a better place to work. So people want to contribute and do what they can to make a difference. So it's keeping the conversation going and not just feeling that job is done once an action is being has been created. It's about following that through and sharing the progress of those actions.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think where the platform can support this also is HR has visibility of the actions that people have committed to. And so, have the opportunity to follow up against people's committed actions at a site level. The system will nudge site leaders that are generating action plans against the schedule that they programmed into their action plan. And whilst I said at the beginning of the webinar, one of the problems over the last 10 to 15 years has been, too many surveys and not enough action. Actually, this is the role of pulse surveys as well. So, if we know that a pulse survey is coming to check in on progress, that can act as a spur to action as well, and to keeping things live. Anya, I've got one for you. And this is I think we're only going to have time for this one. How can we communicate difficult survey results without sounding defensive?
Oh, that's a challenge, isn't it? That's a hard one. But I think just being honest about what needs to change is really important, and this has got to come from the top as well. I think there is that challenge of not letting the results be personal, and having the space and the time to digest and then think about those actions in a really clear and practical way, and communicating that those actions out in a timely and clear and honest way needs to happen. And as I keep mentioning, planned in advance. Even if you do get some results which aren't easy to communicate out, we need to find a practical solution, and that's what this is all about, isn't it? I think that's what we are at People Insight, very practical, and we want to get on with it. We want to make change happen, and that means getting action in place.
Absolutely. And the thing to remember, the thing that I always consider here is, the thing to remember is your employees know what they've said. There's so it's like you can't hide anything. They know what they've said. So honesty is really the only policy here, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Sorry, Anya, did you have a follow-up?
So I was just going to say that we're in a different era now. I've been working at People Insight for over 10 years, and because of social media and everything that's going on, people are happy to give their comments, to give their opinions. And as you said, they know what people know what they've fed back, and it's really important that senior leaders are happy to accept that, reflect it, and communicate back out as well, because we're not nobody can hide.
No,
we need to get on with that.
Radical transparency is the answer. I'm aware of time. Thank you so much, everybody, for spending this time with us. Thank you, Anya and Kate, for your input as well. There are many more challenges that have been posted that we haven't been able to address. But like I say, there's a call to action here. If you're an existing client and you're unfamiliar with some of this functionality, please do book a demo. Or if you'd like us to have a half-hour chat with you just to refresh your thoughts on and have a two-way conversation about your post-survey action plans, please book in using that QR code. If you're not a client and you'd like a demo, and if you're not a client, you don't want a demo, but you want to talk about your survey methodology, your post-survey methodology, again, use that QR code to book a meeting with one of us today. That would be fantastic. We are aware time has been short in this webinar. We've only been able to just sort of skip over the surface of this. And by way of a final thank you, we have a partnership with Eden People and Planet, which means that every single person that attended today, and there were well over 80, we're going to plant a mangrove somewhere where people need mangroves and they need jobs, and that's what Eden People and Planet do. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day.